Good morning, everybody. Thank you for having me here today. It's really a privilege and an honor to be able to share space and reflect on the homily and share it with you today. It's really special for me because the shepherd and the voice, something that's very endearing to me. I believe it's something that has shaped me and has allowed me to be in this capacity. So I'd like to put out, an invitation for anybody that'd like to maybe grab coffee and just share those stories. I'm always open for the opportunity and the experience just to have that cultural exchange and just be in relationship as human beings. And I guess that's what I kind of thought about, is that a lot of times, a lot of people see me as a Native person, but in our tribal communities, we don't even see ourselves as Native people. We just kind of go back to what, like Ron Good was saying here, that we don't call ourselves Mono, we call ourselves Noom, which translates into a human being, or Yokuch, meaning the people, and how you use it, just a human being. And so I guess that's kind of what I was reflecting on, is that there's so many universal experiences for humanity. You can get caught up in the differences and the details, I suppose. But I always kind of now at my age, and approaching 50, reflect on what my grandmother would try to teach me when I was a child. And basically she would just say, there's just Creator's world and the other world. And if you want to talk about black and white and right and wrong and good and bad, it'll all sort itself out if you just see it as Creator's world and the other world. And it's kind of interesting that I see that, and I think about just universal experiences like prayers are universal. So every first Wednesday of the month, as a community organizer with Faith in the Valley, we try to offer prayers in whatever form they may be. Some people use cooking as a form of prayer. Some people use singing, poetry. And so also I'd like to invite you down at the ICE building facility. If you've never been there, come and see it. It's every first Wednesday of the month from 10 to 11, because that's the most likely time you're going to witness somebody being detained in our community on that weekday and at that hour being processed. And once they go into that building in Fresno, chances are they're not going to be coming back out of that building unless they're going to be transferred to one of the facilities down south. So thank you, friends, relatives, brothers, and sisters. I begin in a way that I was taught, the way my people are called to live, and that's by giving thanks. So thank you again, and thank you, Creator, for allowing me to be here and to share space with such loving folks. Thank you for welcoming me into the space with open hearts. Thank you, Pastors Brian and Audrey, for the invitation. I honor all of you. Today we are given two sacred windows. In the Gospel of John, Jesus speaks of the shepherd. He tells us the sheep know the shepherd's voice. He calls them by name, and they follow, not out of fear, but because they recognize the voice that leads to life. And he tells us why. I came that they may have life and have it abundantly. That is the promise. Not survival, not barely making it, but abundant life. I was always told that that's how life was for my ancestors, around prior to the state of California. I was always told that's very abundant life. And then we turn to Acts and we see what happens when people begin to live in that promise. They gather, they pray, they break bread, they share what they have so that no one is in need. This is not just the early church forming, this is people remembering how to live. And when I hear these scriptures, something in me recognizes that voice. Because I come from the peoples of this valley, the Choinumni, the Wokchumni, and the Dunlap Mono Indians. And long before this land was divided, before it was owned, before it was mapped, our people lived in relationship with the land, with one another, with Creator. The land was never a possession, it was a relative. It fed us, it taught us. It holds the memory of our ancestors and ourselves. And life, true life, flourished when those relationships were in balance. That's what I hear echoed in Acts. A community where no one is in need, a community where what is held is shared, a community rooted in relationship. And I would like to just pause to commend all of you, especially with the Rooted in Relationship, and having that series here every Wednesday night for 4 weeks. That was very endearing to me to see that, to see in the conversations that followed that from the elders that you invited, from the guest speakers. I don't think I've ever witnessed something like that here locally in all my life. And so for you to reach out in that way and build a relationship, and for those of you that come to the Fresno American Health Project on a regular basis and forge new relationships, that I honor you. But in the gospel, Jesus also warns us, the thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. For many, that might sound like a metaphor, but for indigenous peoples, it is also history. Land taken, communities displaced, language silenced, relationships broken. And yet, that is not the final word, because the shepherd is still speaking, still calling us back into right relationship. And today, some of that call sounds like what many now hear as land back. It's not as a slogan, but as a prayer that what has been broken might be restored, a prayer that the land might once again be cared for in a good way. And it looks like my printer must have messed up and I don't have the rest of it, so I'd have to go to my phone. But in short, I'd just like to say that it was really special for me because I wouldn't be here if I didn't hear the shepherd's voice. For those of you that have sat with me, I've shared this with you, but for those that you haven't, for all my life, it was always known as S Valley. Go up there, spend time up there. And it was only until my mother had passed and I was just angry. Angry because the cure for her disease was found the following year after she had passed. I went with her through her trials, being a guinea pig for new drugs and experiments, and that being your only lifeline. And to see a profession that I once wanted to aspire to be, but when they just see their patients as a number and are able to kind of giggle at a small error instead of 50 milligrams, my mother should have been getting 500 milligrams. And now it's too late. And so the lifeline ending, and just anger, and that's how I resolved it, was trying to set out to just rename our homeland. Now, it wasn't easy. It was during COVID, and honestly, as a community organizer, I know it should have never happened because I never built enough power for it to change. But on a day when my mom was gone, I had just lost my father to COVID, I had just started this campaign. It was the first time, God knows how long, where I just literally fell to my knees and started to pray. I might have turned my back on Jesus Christ, so to speak, but the door was kind of left open for God or Creator. And while I was on my knees praying, I just wasn't praying. I mean, I was angry, so I was cursing at God. Like, you either going to show me something in this very moment, or that's it. I will never be a believer or a faith. I will be an atheist from this moment off, and I need to get myself up off my knees to take care of myself. And if I don't do that, I'm just a fool because there's nothing there. I'm just talking to the abyss. And it was in that moment that all of a sudden I heard a voice, and it was my voice. And the word choices weren't my word choices, but it was real simple and a basic message that just said, stay the course, and I've known you before you've known yourself. I've never heard that, never experienced that, and I got off my knees and went to bed and woke up. What did I experience? And it could have been very easy to deny it, But I stayed the course. And when it got at its bleakest was when one of the Board of Supervisors threw me out of their meeting, had enough of me coming to their meetings. This was the third time, once in April, once in July, and this final time in November. And because I had stayed the course, I continued writing the petitions and gathering support. That 3 days later, after being thrown out of those chambers, Secretary Holland made her announcement, and the momentum just swung to our side and stayed there. And because I had stayed the course, when the opportunities had arisen for me to submit a petition, I was well prepared. But if I had just not believed, felt like whatever I experienced was something I manifested myself, and it made me reaffirm that our faith and our relationship to that shepherd is very personal. And only you know what it is, and only you can tell in your own being what is true and what is valid, what is Christ-like. And I think for me, that was the first time of actually walking back, trying to be with Christ, trying to be with Creator, and just wanting to be in that feeling again. And it was an overwhelming, and it's interesting because I've heard other people when they talk about being blessed when they're in front of their congregations, they describe it in waves, and that's exactly what this was when I felt that voice. It was waves of serenity that just came over me, and every anxiety, every pain, every worry was just washed away. And that's what I kind of held on to. Like, I know what I know, but I know what I experienced. Maybe some people think I'm crazy, maybe people just scoff at it, but it's so deeply personal that when we talk about the shepherd, that's what I reflect on. I reflect on that personal moment. And I wouldn't be here today, and I wouldn't even, it'd still be S Valley today if that didn't happen in my life. So I thank you for allowing me to share that personal experience with you folks, and thank you for constantly reaching out and trying to develop those meaningful relationships with our tribal community. Because I think oftentimes it's too easy for us as tribal members to say, our boarding schools, our relationships, they came with crosses, they came with Christ. And so a lot of times it's hard for us to even come in here and try to understand that not everybody is like that. Not every church is like that. And we can build relationships that can be meaningful, constructive, and positive impacts on our community. So thank you.